Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Training Industry Leader Talk, Measuring Learning Impact, sponsored by Biz Library, Litmos, SweetRush, and Whatfix. I'm Emma, a marketing associate here at Training Industry, and I'm so excited to have you with us here today. Before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping items to help you get the most out of today's program and interact with our speaker. Throughout today's event, please feel free to use the chat for comments and submit questions in the Q&A panel. You'll see a Q&A icon in the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. All questions will be addressed during the event or at the end of the program during the Q&A section. At the end of your time with us, you'll see a survey will pop open in your browser. We'd really appreciate your feedback on today's event so we can improve our future ones. And as always, all of our sessions are being recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com. So after the sessions, you'll receive an email with a link to the on-demand events, PowerPoints, and all the materials you need. If this is your first Training Industry event, we'd like to welcome you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals. We offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D through live events like today's Leader Talk, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research reports, and many more. Make Training Industry your go-to resource for learning solutions by visiting trainingindustry.com. We'd also love to hear about what you've learned today on social media, so follow us on your favorite platforms and let's continue the conversation. And now, without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker, Kelly Lake. With a career spanning more than 30 years, Kelly possesses a comprehensive understanding of global learning and performance methodologies and strategies. Her expertise extends to immersive learning technologies, customer-centric success, and the strategic enablement of global workforces. A prominent thought leader, speaker, and innovator, she is particularly skilled in artificial intelligence, learning and performance ecosystems, analytics, ROI and ROP, and driving strategic transformation. Kelly, we're so excited to have you here today. Really looking forward to this session. So please take it away.
Well, I thank you very much, and I appreciate you being here, Emma, kicking off the session for us. It is a great opportunity for us to move forward. And hey, it's a great day. And I'm excited to see everybody joining us from a global perspective. Lots of people from around the area. I'm coming from you from Boston today. No snow, which is great. We had some yesterday, so it's always a good thing. But everybody, welcome. Today, really, it's about effective measurement and how we're going to look at this. And I want to come from it from a strategic perspective and provide strategy for you. Let's kick off by just a little bit about SweetRush. I know most of you know who we are, but we are a full-service learning and performance, strategic provider. Basically, we provide innovative, highly creative, and results-oriented solutions. And we focus a lot on AI, with our AI L&D continuum, as well as our XR services, Talent Solutions, which is Staff Aug, custom learning, and of course, strategic consulting. And we are so honored to continually win awards in our industry with our amazing client partners. And a lot of you are on the call today. So thank you very much for that. Again, I'm Kelly Lake. I'm the Chief Strategy Innovation Officer for SweetRush. So why don't we go ahead and dive down really quickly in what we're going to talk about today. It's a very high level in regards to giving you strategy to move forward. So I want to talk just quickly about where we are in the market right now. What does that landscape for transformation look like? Then move into, redefining effective measurement. And then also providing you some strategies to think about, when it comes to modernizing. And then the technology around that if you're not already engaged, to be thinking about, to create this roadmap, to be able to look at a strategy, the strategic format of how you're going to move forward in a very great framework, but also resulting in business outcomes. That's the key to all of that. And then we'll wrap up with a little bit about what's going to be happening moving forward in some areas that you may be hearing about, but also some areas that would round out your whole entire approach to effectiveness. And then we'll wrap up with about 10 minutes of Q&A. So I think that should cover our conversation today. So let's dive down. So we all know that we are in the middle of a transformation with our, across the board with our industry, with organizations. And a lot of that is coming from the demand in the industry about, ensuring that we have the right skilling in place, looking at organizations, the changing of jobs, the changing of or upskilling, reskilling, or continuously skilling. That impact, when it comes to looking at why organizations are going through transformation. But it's not only that, it's how we're looking at to improve efficiencies. There's a lot of contributing forces that come into where we are right now, not only from that aspect, but also from a technology perspective, where AI is pushing us and how we're responding accordingly. And, when we look at where we're going to be in the next several years, industries, global aspects across the board, we're responding to that. And we're starting to see that push. Why do we need, better analytics? Why do we need better measurement? Well, how are we positioning ourselves from that aspect? We're looking at different types of solutions, more immersive solutions. We're looking at how do we engage and actually have insight into better employee experience. And data and being able to measure effectively is really where we're heading and why we're heading in that direction. So let's think about this for a second. So the reason we understand the transformation in the industry right now, what we're doing, how we need to move forward. But the point being is that we're moving from a very archaic way of measuring learning effectiveness, which is a little bit limiting in what we've been doing. And I've spent so many times with organizations globally across the board talking about what does that mean for organizations? How do we move forward? And the question has always been, well, we really don't have visibility in everything. We're not able to have that real-time data. So now we move into how do we return an approach a little bit more holistic than we've ever had before when we're looking at employee engagement, but what are we looking at for return on investment and also return on performance? How we're able to demonstrate that, look at filling that skills gap, at the same time strategically aligning across the board, not only with learning and development, and I'm sure that you're all hearing the collaboration with talent, how important that is, but also with HR and IT. So there's very way to step back these days and say, how can we do this together? What does that mean to, enhance what we're doing from an employee engagement and also making very informed decisions as we move forward. So I just want to pause for 1 second. I'm very interested in, if you don't mind, maybe we'll share with us in chat a little bit about some of the challenges that you might be having with effective measurement right now, current state. I think that would be great to look at. And is why some of you are doing that. I'm going to go ahead and move forward to the next slide just to talk a little bit about understanding what are some successful strategies when it comes to modern measurement. What are the things that you may need to think about? Maybe you're in the process of doing that. Wherever you are in the flow of measurement, as we go to the flow of learning, what does that mean? So there's several core areas that we look at. And one of the most important things is to look at how do we tie back our initiatives with goals of the business. It is so imperative to be able to have those conversations, understand where data-driven and agile approaches come into place. Because now, I've worked with a lot of organizations where we sit down and say, okay, come up with a really strong framework and measurable outcomes to where we are for effectiveness. And what happens is we start off with the conversations from where our goals are from an industry and what those KPIs look like, and then what competency models are in place to ensure that we have the right competencies for job roles, and then tying back to what that looks like. So data analytics is very important as we're looking at this, an agile approach, and understanding the tools that we could be using. I'm going to talk about a little bit of those tools in a few minutes. But that's a mindset change for a lot of organizations to be data driven. Not only that, but if you really take a look at the whole entire skills and competency, measurement, it's a new approach for a lot of organizations, really focusing on skill-based evaluations. How are we measuring this not only in a current state, but how are we going to continuously skill and then have the data insights into that as well? And then the third component of it is something that maybe a lot of organizations have struggled with, is around employee experience metrics, and that's actually a new step in measuring well-being. So those are some interesting aspects to think about it, but really identifying your key metrics will be very, very important. And then one thing a lot of organizations struggle with is, okay, we think we know what we want to measure. We think we know what the outcomes could be, but we have no idea what to do with that data once we actually have it. So there's a way to take a look at this and have an action plan to be able to move forward. So taking action on the data and what you're looking at is vitally important. And again, all this maps back to aligning with, your strategic business goals from beginning to end. So with that being said, I will just pause for 1 second and just take a look at some of the things that we're struggling with. Business metrics year over year, long term, constant changing in the business, no real organizational goals to align. These are really important. Implementation of feedback. How do we measure that? These are all really important aspects when we're looking at how to modernize and what are those particular steps. So something to think about too, and I want to spend a little bit of time really focusing on how technology, works. I call it the measurement ecosystem because it all comes together very nicely. But one thing I would like you to take away is a blend of technology that enables data collection. So it's not just one thing, it's a multitude, and it depends on your culture, your organizational culture. It depends on, not only the culture, but what's important from a business perspective, what tools you'll need to put together to be able to measure your goals. And I will say to you, a lot of challenges come back to saying, hey, L&D and talent, we were doing a great job. We were 15 hats every single day. But when we go back to have those business discussions, a lot of stakeholders do not understand, right? What's the value, how we're proving it back to them, and what does that, landscape look like for us to be able to be efficient. And I will tell you that when we talk about a blend of technology in different aspects, and I'll talk a little bit more about predictive analytics in just a little bit of my favorite topic here. Let's think about the areas that you're going to need to really provide support from a measurement perspective. Okay. So it's not only from data collection and analysis, it's like that is the core of what we're doing, and there's tools for that. And I will tell you that an LMS alone, as we all pretty much know, isn't the only aspect to look at, or sometimes you don't have the visibility into that data, which is gratefully underrated, I would say, as we move forward and we look at like personalized learning. We do have platforms, we do have interactive, AI-based platforms that we're able to utilize, but there are so many more tools that we can pull in to actually give you that holistic approach to how to move forward with a very modern type of measurement, which you're able to go down to the employee level, take a look at what's happening in a real-time perspective. And I say that again, real time, because this is something that is very limited in the past. It's always been, how do you prove effective measurement? Oh, well, here's our basic areas, completions, all these different things, which is fine, but it's not actually proving measurement of success and defining that as important. That's why feedback and evaluation is important. That's why we have tools, specific tools now, and there are so many great partners out in the industry that are really moving, cutting edge forward, which it isn't, that expensive if you do your research and take a look at it. That can help you move forward in those areas. And I think also with the focus on efficiency and also accessibility, there are different approaches that you can use, more of a blended approach. And I would also suggest that after this session today, those of you that want to learn a little bit more, please follow up with us, because I'd be happy to explain what that landscape looks like. What are different tools that actually work hand in hand to help you with that? And I think it's really important to be able to take a step back and say, you know what, we've tried this or we haven't, but we still want to get to those business outcomes. And what do those business outcomes look like? And I'm just going to go right back in the chat for 1 second. And here's another aspect, okay? Yes, I will talk about replacing Kirkpatrick because we have a brand new next-gen approach to how we actually measure. Now, Kirkpatrick goes back to the 1970s for last update. With the next gen, it actually does business first modeling, which enables organizations to be able to look at what is that effectiveness and the tie between the organizational goals and the L&D goals. How do we do that? What is the framework for that? But I think it's important as a part of those discussions, what happens when you don't have leadership buy-in? What happens when leadership doesn't see the vision? A lot of times when we have these conversations like, hey, it's all about revenue, it's all about productivity, we are business, but at the same time, how do we get that? So I think one of the most important things to say back, being an L&D person myself, is to come back and use a language that is definitely connected to the stakeholders. And that language goes back to, what does measurement efficiency actually look like and is defined within your organization current state. And it takes time to educate your stakeholders. But with your stakeholders, understanding, maybe approaching them with more of a business model or a business case, and this is what we're measuring, this is how it's going to yield these outcomes, will help them understand and take them through that journey. So it's not only the stakeholders, but it's also the leaders, right? Understanding what that's going to accomplish. And I will tell you, I just came back from being on the road with 5 of our largest customers, and one of the customers right in the beginning of the conversation was like, we just had a strategic conversation with our leaders, and our leaders came back with the typical question: how do we know that the learning that we're doing is effective? And this is when we started this conversation about modernizing what we're doing, because the old metrics are not working and they're not helping us move forward in a very strategic way. And then I also think too, just taking a few more look back here, um, what happens, how do you adjust a modern measurement strategy where there's so many influxes within a business and changing? And I will tell you that, creating your strategy is very much a growing process. It is something that you have to revisit. And, once you put it in place, because of the changes in what's happening and because of the measurements against your goals, it's something that you'll need to revisit and talk to your stakeholders more than you have before, just for alignment purposes, for visibility, back for proof back to the business that what we're doing as L&D leaders are actually, aligning to what they need. But it is education, is taking the time to do that once you have your strategy in place. Okay, I think those are important points. And as we take a look at what does measurement strategy framework look like, a successful one, I will give you like 5 basic areas to start with, and there are tiers below each one of these that we can talk about a little bit more. But for a high level perspective, just to make sure that you're on the right track and able to have those conversations with your stakeholders, the biggest impact is understanding that you define very clear strategic, objectives, making sure that they are able to map back, but at the same time is that you have very positive business outcomes that you can tie to them. Number one starting point when you're looking at that. Also within that is your KPIs, having the metrics in place and the KPIs. And again, lessons learned, and I'll share more insights with this, is that a lot of organizations haven't touched their if they have KPIs, they haven't touched them in quite some time. Majority of customers that I've worked with do not have existing KPIs. Therefore, you're starting off with understanding how you're proving the goals within the organization. Therefore, without those KPIs or that alignment, you will not prove success with business outcomes. It is key to every single thing you do. So one thing that you can do is ensure that you're fostering a complete, data-driven culture. It is very important. It's a mindset shift. Oh, we are going to rely on our data. A lot of organizations will say, well, how do we know our data is even, exact, or if it's been proven to be, are we measuring the right things? Are we extracting the right data in the right amount of time? So a lot of that, those conversations, and again, with the chat, what I'm seeing happening right now, it's being able to prove, okay, we understand this, we've set our objectives, we clearly understand that, we've gone back to revisit our KPIs. And even if you have your business goals, you can still move forward to map your particular objectives to those business goals, even if you don't have KPIs. But it's a starting point to be able to have those conversations. You still need measurement against putting together your framework to be successful moving forward. The nice thing about that is educating your organizations to that mind shift, thinking about, what does a data-driven culture look like? What our leaders need to know? What are my teams need to know? How am I working with other verticals within my organization? How am I working with talent? What are the reports we need to pull and the analytics that we need to? So I think that's important. Selecting, the right technology is important as well to prove that measurement. And I do have recommendations for different types of technologies within those areas that, I'd be happy to share that with you as well. And to wrap up that framework, continuous improvement. You will need to revisit it quite often. Once you do have a strategy in place, it would be quarterly. But when you start, I would be looking monthly at what you are, what you're doing, how you're able to prove that back, and then share the results. Take the time to educate your stakeholders with, hey, look, we've done this short term, long term. Anything that you can quantify with your data as success will help that alignment. So I take the time to do that. And like I said, this is a high level approach to a framework, and we can spend more time talking about this after we follow up post our event today. But the big thing for the talk for today is about the business outcomes. So if we build, this type of a framework, and we understand what are those benefits to the business, what are the things that we can actually point to, that we can talk to stakeholders about, right off the bat with having a framework in place and having an insight into the data is improving performance across the board, improving productivity, getting the chance to be able to close some skill gaps. I mean, that is an amazing first step to be able to do. Obviously, with the profitability of the business, it's an impact, but look at the potential around, customer service experience, how that will increase as well. And we talk about engagement and retention, which is vitally important. That will come along with being able to have the measurement in place to be able to prove that. And then also it'll help you reduce your costs. It will create an organization that, you're able to look at data-driven decisions or measurement to make those decisions. And then that will input, I would say your approach to your business leaders and to the organization around aligning your goals. And it is important to prove value when you're talking about measurement. It is important in multiple areas to be able to look at what those metrics look like to prove success. And then having that ongoing improvement process is vitally important as well. So I think that if you take away from today, I'm either building out a framework, it's an alignment of what we're doing, or hey, I haven't thought about these particular areas before, and I didn't realize this could yield so many different business outcomes. So take the time, please do enter your questions in Q&A today. I think it's important that, we're able to take a look at this and be able to address some of these additional areas as well. And also, when you think about your business outcomes, there are measurability factors with those outcomes. So it's not only just organizationally, it's within your L&D area. How are we looking at this? And those decisions help you with, are we developing, the right type of training? Are we, embedding more user experience in this? Are we making it more interactive? Are we helping retention numbers across the board? So there's different types of input to be successful in what you're doing, but it's also to be recognized and seen within your organization as a very proactive way to bridge those gaps. And I just appreciate everybody being here today and being able to hear some of those inputs as we go through that. So let me just check chat one more time before we get into this and talk about, KPI training programs is exactly, and KPIs are most percentages exactly. We have a lot of great input here in the chat today, and I will tell you, you can tell that folks that are dealing with this every single day, and there's different approaches as you come to this, right? We have modern KPIs that we use, and we're redefining KPIs in the market. What's different? How are you modernizing that? The competency models have grown greatly over the last 16 months, I will tell you, with companies. It used to be the competency model was everything for measurement. How are we doing? Are we in alignment? But with organizations having such a shift across the board with employee jobs and promotions and, with the staffing shortage of what we're going through, those have to be very, I would say, flexible and adaptable. And as we're looking at how do you sustain that consistency across the board, go back to your framework, take a look at how you're building this out. And there are several models in place that I would be happy to share with you that, again, working with a lot of large global organizations, how we've done that, how we put that in place and what that means. But also, I hear a lot of, well, what happens when we're a small organization? We're not too sure, is it important? We have 5 core focus areas with maybe 50 competencies, and is this something that we really need to pay attention to as we grow? And then business interruption comes with acquisitions or, new products going out, and how are we doing that? And then there becomes a shortage of skills. So depending on the size, I would go back to your culture. It's vitally important. Okay. Just to talk a little bit more, as we've gone through and understand the need for modernization, what are some of those key areas from an innovation perspective that, we should be looking at across the board? What are those impact areas? So I would say back to look at, AI is playing a very strategic role in what we're doing, more so now than ever from a modernizing perspective and having that real time. And I think that if you look at real time, personalization, or what we're calling hyper personalization these days, is really focusing on the individual performance. Now, with dashboards that are in place, we have more visibility now than ever. Look at AI coaching. Those of you that have not, moved forward at all with AI coaching and feedback, I will tell you is very beneficial. There have been numerous amounts of innovation around this. It's worth looking at it, investing to be able to have that impact right at the need. And I think that, as we look at this, we're looking at being able to solve problems in the need of, where learning actually hits the need from a day-to-day, from a user perspective, a learner perspective, all the way up to senior, supervisors and management and leader training. It's always in the need. And I think that being able to do that, and then also taking a look at having like a dynamic skills gap analysis right in that time, also gives you real-time visibility into what's going on, and then also with recommendations that allow you to have insight and therefore be able to shift. But again, hyper personalization is a huge trend this year. There's a lot of great data on that. We're working with our customers right now across the board, and please do reach out and take a look at what's happening in the industry. And you can implement on a very small level. It doesn't need to be large initiatives to show impact. Okay. Also, think about what's going on as far as integrating employee experience. A huge shift, right, from where we had been in the market now to more of a holistic approach. And I think it's vitally important that we really look at what that means by a holistic approach. Taking a look at data and from a new perspective, taking a look at what that means to be able to look at data across the board, not just from, high end, but really drilling down and taking a look at also what that data integration looks like within the flow of learning, within the flow of a lot of the business of what we're doing, being able to have that real-time data. And I will explain, there was an organization that I was with like 3 weeks ago, amazing organization. And they kept saying, we don't have visibility into workflow. We don't have visibility into where learning hits within the flow of work. So how do we approach, from a metric perspective, insights into, learning in the flow of work? So one of the areas that we were talking about was small micro immersive solutions that actually enable organizations and learners to take small interactive components within what they're doing from a day to day, not leaving, but staying with them, actually accessing it from a laptop or a workstation where they can actually dive down into it rather than wait to the end of the day or not being able to resolve it. And then being able to have measurement against that in the flow of work. These are core areas that are so important. I think that being able to have the insights on that really helps organizations across the board. So again, take a look at different options, different ways to approach things. We've actually worked with an organization where we were able to deploy immersive, micro immersive within different types of empathy training. So it's different mindset of what you can do, how you can apply it, but then it's the how you're measuring it from a data perspective really enables you to make those decisions to move forward. And then also all the conversations that we're having currently around privacy and how that's impacting. So I think with having the employee experience with new lens of having, what does that mean from a whole entire, privacy perspective, and what does that mean for my whole entire employee experience, really pulls it together. It gives us more value in what we're doing with the experience for all different types of employees across the board, not just, it also goes back to leaders and supervisors and everyone else with insight in that too. So I will pause one moment and I want to go back up to our chat real quick. Okay. All right, excellent. So let's go ahead and just wrap this up a little bit. So I want to talk a few more minutes just about predictive measurement, actually proactive when it comes to analytics, but really important around predictive AI. Predictive AI is such an amazing approach to what we're doing, being able to look at current state data and then also do predictiveness to help organizations, to help L&D leaders, move forward in a proactive way. So we could talk predictive analytics for quite some time, but look into it, look into your organization, maybe you're currently using it, but take a look at also with your talent, right? So that around the data-driven talent is so important because you're identifying high potential employees across the board. So the more insight you have, the more you're going to increase your productivity, the more you're going to help your learners reach their potential in their roles and look for new roles as well. And then also around, scenario modeling, which means as you're able to do predictiveness around workforce impact, and it simulates that. So it gives you greater sense of what's happening from a proactive perspective. And then also around AI when it comes to augmented decisions. And this is really important. And it's not only around, data in the time, but it's taking a look at utilizing for talent all the way from hiring process straight through to, employee development and training. It gives you those insights. And again, that's why I'm telling you L&D and talent come together. It's so vitally important this year. And that which leads you to a whole entire data-driven strategy, right? Which goes back to aligning your business. Leverage your partnerships, leverage your capacity to collaborate across the board because it's important. Talent helps L&D, and I think that unification this year and the streamlining and the benefits of it with the data combined really gives a tremendous amount of insight for organizations. And then also really important is your real-time reporting. Being able to have that at your fingertips. It is one of the best things for L&D that you can see across the board because you're not going to have to wait. You can actually pull that in. AI makes a huge impact on being able to make appropriate and, I would say correct decisions to move forward. And then you can augment what you're doing and adjust it accordingly. So we'll take a look at these 4 core areas. There are more, but if you take a look and say, listen, I understand how to use AI from a reporting perspective. Maybe that's something that we need to move a little bit more aggressively on. Not only that, but really taking a look at what personalization, hyper-personalization looks like across the board. So saying that, I'm going to pause for a moment and we could talk about this a lot, but we really should move into QA because I've been taking a look at there's some really positive, interaction that we have going on there. So I will turn this over to Emma and ask what questions that we would like to address at this point, please.
Sure, there are definitely plenty to choose from, but this one I'm seeing Chris and Carol want to see further ideas or examples of those immersive interactions. And then Chris kind of expanded on this question, said, do you have any resources or places I can look for more info on how to integrate those small immersions?
Oh,
We're a branch network that is spread everywhere and we need remote strategies.
let me just address that real quickly. Yes, absolutely. Once I'll be happy to share those with you. We have actually demos in place to be able to, show you what that looks like and also give you insight on how you can apply them. Happy to provide that information.
Awesome. This from Kim. When it comes to microlearning, does anyone follow a specific recommendation or standard for how they define it? Duration, objectives. This might have been a question for the group, but I don't know if you might have some thoughts.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting because we're evolving in microlearning, and we actually have an amazing person on our team who is a expert in this area and speaks quite oftenly. So we do have best practices. We have a way of defining it current state, but also what that looks like moving forward, right? So we have input, we have an amazing design approach that we take, and I think that we get happy to share that with you to give you some insight. And I think the more information that we can give you just from a conversation perspective will help you move forward. And, sharing best practices, that's what it's all about, right? And being able to explain to you what we're doing with other customers, what are positive things, but also some areas that that may not be working, and to give you insights on that as well. So I appreciate the question.
Here's another one from Brianna. Can Kelly share some examples of skills mapping and talent intelligence platforms? I'm so very curious about what options are out there.
Absolutely. And I was saying that I try to stay agnostic on talks, about promoting, but definitely do have recommendations on those different types. And again, it's a lot of the different types of platforms are evolving this year. So, I've always been proactive in regards to having, AI embedded in what we're doing, just from the analytics perspective of it. But there are some new skill platforms that are out there that I would recommend. I think there's some amazing vendors that are in the market right now. And then after this conversation, I would be more than happy to send you a list or provide you a list through our marketing team, and reach out to me as well directly as well, not only on LinkedIn, but also we'll have my email address. Happy to share that with you.
Great. How do we get buy-in from different departments and leaderships for this transformation?
Mm, Good challenging question there. It's always I hit on it a little bit earlier in regards to one of the areas, and I will give you an example. I was working with a pharmaceutical company, and they were challenged, and they thought that there was no way to move forward. But there's actually a small business type proposal that we use with a lot of our organizations, short, to the point, shows productivity. But a lot of the times it's a disconnect from a communication perspective. And I really mean it when I say to you, try to find the common language back so you can get that attention. Also leverage, if there's sometimes when you want to leverage a partner, we work with a lot of our partners to come up with how do you position it, best practices to position it. Sometimes we hop on calls with stakeholders to say, hey, listen, we're working with, the L&D leader, and they call on us to give examples. And so leverage that kind of a relationship too. You don't have to be in it on your own, but happy to share what that looks like, some successful things that we've had in regard, because a lot of times, unfortunately, L&D, sometimes we're so busy, we're thinking, hey, maybe that's not that important. But if you're able to position it well and be able to articulate well, you will impact the whole entire organization. And it's a very proactive thing to do. So happy to help in those aspects as well.
Awesome. This is a good one. How can we ensure our measurement efforts are driving action and continuous improvement?
Mm, That's important. I think when you put your framework together and you take a look at what those objectives are and you're measuring them against your outcome, it's going to take constant. Are we doing this? How are we doing this? We've actually created, very simplistic dashboards for L&D leaders to take a look at, to do measurement against it, and then being able to have them present back, right, to ensure that they are measurable. A lot of times, without having AI and some, predictive analytics in it, there's a lag in time for measurement. And I think that's one thing is very important to understand, that with using proactive measurement tools, you're able to do it real time. So for an example, I had a strategic partner with me the other day. She's amazing, runs a great organization. And she's like, I have to present to my boss and the different leaders within our organization, but I don't know what to pull together to share with them. So I gave them recommendations on different aspects, but measuring. So there are certain key indicators that are important when you're doing your measurement that you can hit to say, okay, am I on target? Am I not on target? Okay, if I'm not, what do I need to be able to do this? So you have greater visibility into it. I would say pull this into one centralized location. And if you need help with a dashboard, more than happy to be able to provide a little bit more insight on that as well.
And then how often should we be reviewing and adapting those workforce measurement frameworks?
Oh, you're giving me a lot of good questions, Emma. Okay, so it's it's when you're starting out. So you're either, depending on where you are in the flow of your measurement, strategy. I think that a lot of organizations will either wait to mid-year or end of year to take a look at that and say, is this going against, because they're doing a lot of also goals for the organization, or we're doing our pre-planning for our budgets, sometime in the year, hopefully before that August time period for the next year, and coming back and saying, all right, what are we doing here and how are we able to move forward on it? And I think measurement on your measurement strategy is key. Take the time to do that. Don't wait. Quarterly is fine once you get up and running, but validate it as quickly as you can. And I would take a look at it if you're starting to do that on certain programs that you're rolling out. Pilot certain programs with your new strategy or your updated strategy and say, is this working? Have several of them in parallel or just being able to do that, but look at those independently. Go back, look at your matrix. Is this working? Isn't this working? And then break it down by types. That's important as well too. And then tie that back. So the more visibility you have into it until you get into, I would say constant kind of, and it's working for you, take the time, take a look at it. It's very hard for us with timing with a month, but keep it within like a 2-month period, 3-month period for the program rolling out to see how you're doing, and then overlap it with another one so you have continued. And use your analytics. Take the time to really do some investigation, some analytics, because if you have those tools in place and and depending on what you're measuring, that will give you the key to how often you'll have to do that. But keep more eye on at the beginning of it. It allows you to do that. If you don't have technology in place, that's going to give you a little bit of handicap. Let me know where you are in your process, and I can help you through what does that technology look like and how you're able to revisit. But keep an eye on it, and the more time that you're aligning with business stakeholders, and the more successful you're going to be.
Amazing. Well, this session has been full of advice, but here we have another question, a little bit more specific. What advice would you give to an organization that is just starting their journey to modernize workforce measurement?
So if you're just starting, one of the key areas, again, is focusing. If I was starting, and this is my organization, I think it's really important that we're looking at, okay, we may not know what the business outcomes may need to be, but we understand what our CEO or what we want to accomplish within the year and being able to do that. I would focus in the beginning on what those goals are and what's the need for the training, right? So if you're doing this, what are those core needs? Is it improved performance? Is it in, certain aspects of what we're doing? It all comes down to productivity and organizational success. So I would start fresh with that and then move through your framework in regards to identifying your objectives. But I would, as you go through that process, I would have those discussions back with your stakeholders or with that, whoever's making the determination, the C-level, whoever, just to say, listen, we're doing this for the first time. Here are core areas that we're focusing on. If we're able to focus on these objectives for our goals, and we think this can improve these business outcomes, validate it first before you do any more work. That's one of the biggest areas that I see, organizations, having to do rework over and over and over again. If you get alignment in the front, then you're able to move more forward strategically, and then you're able to put business goals. But take your time, work through it methodically, and again, pick and choose your projects so you can prove success. Because as you go through, educating your stakeholders or where your champions that are in the organization are really going to help you move forward. And like I said, take the time and make sure that your alignment. That's the biggest key to starting off.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelly. We're out of questions. We are out of time. This has been a fabulous session, getting lots of thank yous and kudos in the chat.
Excellent. I appreciate it, Emma, so much. And for those of you who are on today, please do feel free to reach out. More than happy to help you with some information and help you move forward. We're all in this together, my friends, and we are in the middle of a transformation. So please, our doors are always open for you. Emma, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, y'all. So we're going to take a 15-minute break. Our next session will begin at the top of the hour. We have Darshan Chandran joining us from WhatFix. That session is called Scaling Digital Skills with Experiential Learning. In just a moment, I'm going to close this session. You can join the next session by going back to the Zoom lobby and clicking on the Sessions tab. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your break, and I'll see you in the next one.